very pleased to be here. This is a great concept and a great group. I have had some individual and small collaborations with artists and done work at that interface, but I'm going to be talking about something rather unusual and singular and different here that tangents into art, but also into philosophy, culture, religion. For 4 years, I've had the privilege of going to India, northern India, and teaching Buddhist monks cosmology. It's a program set up by the Dalai Lama about 12 years ago when he was worried that the Tibetan culture was going to become a museum piece and that the monastic tradition was venerable but didn't really incorporate math and science. And so he started a program to teach his monks, junior and senior, math and science. And it's an extraordinary experience for the teachers. And so for me, it turned into an experience of pedagogy, of education, of what it means to learn, of what it means to relearn your subject. And I'm just going to use my short time to give you a little flavor of that. So for this purpose of teaching the monks, it was such an unusual audience and an unusual situation that I used the opportunity to throw away everything I knew from 30 years of teaching astronomy and start from scratch, render my subject down to its basic elements and rebuild. I adopted a mandala framework for organizing the content. Eightfold Way, of course, has deep meaning in the arts and the sciences, physics in particular. I'm going to give you a little flavor of the kind of things that we covered. This was a month-long workshop, highly interactive. We were using learner-centered techniques, and the monks are extraordinary learners. They were indefatigable after 10 or 12 hours in the classroom, and they, of course, having got up at 5 in the morning to pray, so they'd already been on their feet for 4 hours before I even saw them. To do this, of course, I give you the briefest flavor of the place itself, of India, the chaos, the beauty, the people, the colors, and the monks. In exile, about 40,000 monks living in exile, scattered through India. Most of the big monasteries are in the south. We were teaching in Dharamsala, the Tibetan government in exile location. And as you can see, we had fun in the classroom. It's not possible to convey, although I will in one brief clip, the intensity and lightness with which they approach knowledge, they approach life. This is Dharamsala. So I organized the subject matter in particular ways, and without being slavish or artificial, tried to have it resonate with their tradition and their way of viewing the world, because I wanted to learn about that too. And so we talked about ways of knowing, ways of seeing the universe, and in simplistic terms, there's only been a few revolutions in astronomy. The one where Galileo put two lenses together and made a telescope, the one through the 20th century where we opened up the electromagnetic spectrum, and the one that's on the horizon right now where we learn to see with gravity eyes. And of course, inspiration in art and science has the same genesis. It's often the juxtaposition of the familiar to make something striking and brilliant and new. And of course, it's to do with imagination, whether it's Newton imagining orbits 3 centuries before we had the technology to realize it, or artists imagining the habitable worlds that the Kepler mission is now finding out there in space. So we considered space and time in the deepest sense, and we use metaphors and analogies and models, and the technology is very primitive. That was a month with no running water and no internet. No hot water. There was running water, no hot water, no internet, if you can imagine that. Yes, quite low tech, and a fairly simple diet. So we use grains of sand as metaphors. They are, of course, little worlds in their own. If you look at them with a magnifying glass, we counted grains of sand. I wanted them to be able to do something that professional scientists forget how to do, which is experience numbers in their solar plexus, in their gut. And so we learned to experience 1 billion grains of sand, the number in a bucket, or 100 billion grains of sand, the number in the galaxy. The number of grains of sand in a mandala happens to correspond to the number of habitable worlds in the Milky Way, for example. And so we went from there up to the scales of the universe. If you put a grain of sand representing the diameter of the solar system in this room, there'd be a couple in this room, and the galaxy would be the size of the continental US. That's the Milky Way. Bring that down a factor of 100 million, and the Milky Way's a dinner plate, a couple in the volume of this room. And the visible universe is the size of the continental US. So we tried to feel these in our guts, and we tried to do the same thing with time. Modern cosmology has a genesis, and the Judeo-Christian tradition accords with that in having genesis. But most of the world's cultures, in fact, have had cyclic time. And even cosmology has now adopted variants of the Big Bang where time is cyclic. I got to learn from them by learning of their cycles of time. And when a senior monk tried to tell me what a great kalpa was, the largest measurable interval in Buddhist tradition and Hindu tradition, something of order 1 trillion years, he turned the tables on me and said, how do you understand that in your gut? And I didn't. So he told me a story, told by the Brahma apparently, of what it means to have a kalpa. Imagine a mountain, a cubic mile of granite, and a dove flies past this mountain once a year and brushes it with its wing. A kalpa is how long it takes to erode the mountain. You don't need to speak or understand Tibetan to see what's going on here. This is one of our group learning activities. We arranged unlabeled pieces of paper, pictures of things that happen in the universe, from the Big Bang to the human history, quite recent. We arrange them in time order, and each group of monks does it themselves, and then the monks go around the other groups and critique them. In this little clip, you'll see a geshe, senior monk, very learned senior monk, explaining why his group has ordered them the way he has, and you'll see he gets a little pushback. You'll learn everything you need from body language. You don't need to understand what he's saying. We talked about the structure of the universe, and the Ouroboros is a famous, also a mythic structure going back in time for thousands of years that unites the world of the very small and the very large, which happens, in fact, in the Big Bang itself. And grains of sand are useful because they convey simplicity and complexity in the same breath, the complexity of a pile of sand, for example, needing nonlinear equations to describe it. We talked about issues that are at the heart of Buddhist and Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy, the idea of emergence, that things can be more than the sum of their parts. The fact that a single water molecule is clearly not wet, it's not transparent, it's not a solvent, and it's not polar, and yet water is. Neurons can't think or be self-aware, know death or create, and yet a collection of them can. So we tried to organize the subject matter, dissect it, not be too reductionist, and consider it in all its parts. And we even considered life in the universe, perhaps the last frontier of astronomy. The fact that we're all one, united in a molecular tree of life, and that is a very strong tradition from the East as well, the idea of the unity of nature and the interconnectedness of nature. So these things resonate between the two disciplines. And to give you a final little sense of it, I'll show you this montage. Okay, thanks very much.